Okay, now that we're warmed up, let's travel on from your memory to Peru. This is a true story. This is August 2013. I'm sitting in a helicopter. The massive rotors are hammering against the humid air masses. We're flying at 200 kilometers over the rainforest of northern Peru. It's a sea of trees, 500 kilometers in all directions. You see nothing but trees, the oldest trees in the world. There's a lot of wind coming in, and despite the wind, I have sweat on my forehead. I look over to the pilot. He nods at me. He points at the horizon, and I see a thin but tall mast at the horizon, and my heart starts pumping faster. We take a few turns and then sit the helicopter on the moist floor of the rainforest. And I look up and I see a massive construction area. There's diggers, there's metal and steel all around. There's hundreds of workers working around the borehole. That's where they're taking out oil from the rainforest floor, or ground, I should say. And this is the black gold that's going to be delivered all the way to the Pacific. The pipeline, the company I worked for, built the pipeline. And the pipeline would lead straight from the borehole all the way west for hundreds of kilometers to the Pacific Ocean. Now, a lot of these pieces of the pipeline were not yet finished. They were not yet welded together. There was a problem. This pipeline didn't want to finish. My boss, Luis Vargas, he had a problem with organizing the teams. He had a problem with the 300 or so workers that were constructing this pipeline. The morale was very low. High performance was a foreign word, as was innovation. And this wasn't something that had to do with expertise. This company had finished dozens of these pipeline projects in the past. It seemed as if this glue between the workers was missing. They were in the jungle mud. It's very moist there. They were stuck in jungle mud. But what was even stickier was the chain of command, the micromanagement. And they had tried numerous times. They had installed cameras, tried to solve this issue with fear. They tried with advisory, with strategy from external consultants, but nothing had worked. And my boss was running out of options, and he had to make a decision. What I didn't know, I was supposed to be his secret weapon. But without a briefing, he had sent me in. And so, what do you do without a briefing? I did what seemed most intuitive to me, and I started talking to the teams on the ground. I started talking to the excavator drivers, to the technicians, to the engineers. And what I was really getting at was two questions. The first question was, why do you work here? This is obviously not a question about a secure income or something like this. This was about understanding if the people on the ground doing the work had the same mission as the people in Lima, in the capital, in the headquarters of the company. Did they work towards the same worthwhile goal? And I found something interesting. I found out that the energy security meant tangible social progress for the people working there. The oil would lift their community out of poverty. Right? They could now take advantage of opportunities that you and I take for granted, people from the global north. It was as if I could see their children at the school gate. And question number 2 was, what is the one factor that stops your work from flowing? I tried to understand if in the process, what was the frustrations that caused this glue between the people not being there? What caused the flow between the workers to disappear? And again, I found something interesting. I found out that a lot of these people were very capable people. They were specialists at what they do. However, there was intervention on multiple ends of people, in headquarters often, that would come in and tell them what to do. And the problem was, paradoxically, that created more chaos rather than less. Because these people were so focused on getting a certain result, but they had very little understanding of the local and the current requirements on site, right? And so what do? Well, one morning, I thought about it thoroughly, and I came up with this plan, and I thought, okay, there's two things that we need to do. The first thing is we need a common philosophy, right? Something that drives us. And number two is we need consistent deregulation on that chain of command hierarchy level. Why? Because let's face it, you and I know that this chain of command, the cascading of information, works far less efficient than we think it does, right? And these people are perfectly capable of making decisions themselves. They're, by the way, perfectly capable of deciding what needs to be done, in what order, and then negotiate between themselves how to solve problems that come up on the site, right? Okay, so a week after we landed, the helicopter lifts from the pad again. I'm on it, and there's no report that gets issued. There's no speech that gets done. There's no consulting fees that get paid. But over the weeks that followed, management implemented some of these things, and the need for intervention disappeared. The need for incentives disappeared. Conservatively speaking, the results were in the many millions. And so the leak that pipeline had, so to speak, was closed. Now, what's the point of the story? The point of the story is, how do you look at the people you lead? Do you look at them as children that you need to intervene at every step of the journey? Or do you look at them as adults that can handle the resources to get the job done? Think about that. And I'm not speaking about children. You're all going to say, of course I don't look at my employees as children. I'm thinking, in the process, do you feel like you always have to take their hand, right? When maybe they can actually do it, right? And a friend of mine says this: motivation is like a plant. If you pull on it, or if you water it too much, it will die. But if you give the environment where the plant can do all the work itself, it will grow and flourish, and it will delight you with all her glory, right? And so what do leading companies do? Leading companies, and I'm sure some of you are already doing this, what they do is they really have three things that are prime for them. Number one is information flow. Do everything that the information actually gets to where it needs to, right? No blockages. Number two, enable idea exchange. Let these people talk among themselves, empower them to come up with ideas. And number three, relative autonomy. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in just a second, okay? Now, for you, first of all, I want to give you a takeaway. Takeaway number one of today's presentation is new forms of collaboration are your competitive advantage.